When you stand inside a modern high-rise, you expect the floors to hold your weight and the glass to resist the wind. We place absolute trust in the structural integrity of the spaces we inhabit. But concrete and steel are inherently vulnerable. Without strict, legally binding parameters governing exactly how they are tested and assembled, modern materials can easily succumb to fire and extreme stress. The mechanism keeping these structures intact is the National Construction Code, or NCC. It acts as the invisible legal architecture that holds the Australian built environment together. Every single firewall, every sprinkler system, and structural limit embedded in this code exists for a reason. These protective measures were drafted into law precisely because a historical failure demanded them. Australia's earliest building regulations were drafted in the 19th century as a desperate reaction to a specific threat: dense, timber-framed colonial settlements with thatched roofs and open fires. As cities grew, the responsibility for safety fell to local municipal councils. This created a fractured system of localized bylaws. One council might demand thick brick walls for buildings over 2 stories, while the neighboring postcode required no such thing. By the mid-20th century, this patchwork system became an economic nightmare. A national supplier trying to introduce a new facade panel or structural connector had to navigate dozens of contradictory council rules to get materials approved. These hyper-local prescriptive rules managed the immediate fire hazards of the 1800s, but they eventually created a logistical bottleneck that stalled construction innovation for decades. Through the 1980s, the Australian construction industry was expanding rapidly. The sector demanded a single, unified standard to clear away the regulatory chaos. The federal government has no authority to create national building laws. That power is reserved for the states. The 1988 Building Code of Australia was published as a model document, gaining legal power only when states drafted into legislation. Aligning 9 different governments on a single standard was a massive microeconomic reform. It eliminated the cost of navigating multiple regulatory systems and unlocked a new level of industry productivity. In 1996, the newly formed Australian Building Codes Board executed a massive pivot. Instead of dictating exactly how a building must be built, they rewrote the code to dictate what the final building must achieve. The code features dual pathways. The deemed to satisfy route is a traditional recipe book. Following a rigid checklist guarantees compliance. The performance solution route lets architects propose novel designs, provided they mathematically prove the structure meets core safety objectives. This shift allowed for expansive open floor plates and complex new geometries. It also transferred a heavy burden of risk directly onto the individual certifiers, who had to verify the engineering logic. In December 1989, a magnitude 5.6 earthquake struck Newcastle, killing 13 people and destroying modern masonry buildings in a zone previously considered low risk. The disaster forced regulators to mandate rigorous limit state design and apply widespread seismic hazard requirements across the continent. Following the devastation of the Black Saturday fires in 2009, the code's bushfire attack level framework was heavily reinforced. It mandated strict use of non-combustible materials and ember-resistant openings tailored to a site's exact radiant heat risk. When fires raced up the aluminum composite cladding of the La Crosse Tower in Melbourne and later Grenfell in London, it exposed fatal flaws. Regulators executed sweeping crackdowns on the use of combustible external facades on high-rises. The building code is inherently reactive. It purchases its safety rules with the cost of these previous systemic failures. By 2011, the rulebook was rebranded as the National Construction Code. Regulators integrated a massive new 3rd volume, absorbing plumbing and drainage to enforce water efficiency standards nationwide. This chart tracks the code's aggressive sustainability mandates. Residential thermal performance requirements have climbed steadily from early star ratings, reaching a strict 7-star NatHERS minimum in 2022, alongside hard caps on whole-of-home energy use. That same year, the code introduced mandatory livable housing design standards.
Features like step-free entries and wider doorways are now required to ensure new housing stock can accommodate an aging and disabled population. Modern building regulation now engineers for the long term, weaving environmental performance and societal accessibility into the definition of a safe structure. The next regulatory frontier is embodied carbon. Future editions of the code aim to track and limit the greenhouse gas emissions generated by manufacturing and transporting building materials, driving the industry toward net zero emissions. We are also approaching the era of digital twins. Soon, building information modeling software will algorithmically cross-reference a digital replica of a structure against the NCC, verifying safety compliance before a single foundation is poured. The rules have expanded from scattered colonial ordinances banning thatched roofs into a highly sophisticated, unified legal framework governing every pipe, wire, and beam across 9 jurisdictions. The National Construction Code stands as a 160-year archive of human effort, a physical record of our failures, and the engineering triumphs used to overcome them. For more deep dives into the architecture of our built environment, visit jstructure.com.